Hey guys, I'm Anna.
And I'm Brian.
And we are Those Annoying Vegans! So we are here to review the new documentary directed by Christopher Quinn and produced and narrated by Natalie Portman called Eating Animals, based on Jonathan Safran Foer's book, Eating Animals.
We went to the screening last night and the movie is now open in limited release, and so we wanted to talk to you guys basically from memory, what we remember, and we want to go in depth and talk about the documentary as best as we can. We would say spoiler warning, but I don't know if there's really such a thing as a spoiler warning for a documentary.
No.
Because there's no like secret villain. Yeah. But if you absolutely don't want to know anything about the documentary, then go watch it for yourself and come back and watch this. But it is a limited release, and so not a whole lot of people will be able to see it at first. So we wanted to share our thoughts.
Our screening came with the added bonus of a Q&A with Christopher Quinn and Natalie Portman.
Let's get into it, shall we?
Let's get into it.
So we had heard that this documentary was going to be pro small-scale free-range farming. And all of the interviews that we saw with Natalie Portman leading up to the release of the documentary kind of insinuated that that might be the case, because all the interviews were very, very gentle. They were very
flexible.
Yes.
I don't want to judge anyone.
You're not wagging a finger at those of us who eat meat, but you want us to be aware of the consequences.
The movie really focuses on the good farmers who are doing it right.
You're saying there are farmers trying to do it kind of the old-fashioned way so that meat eaters can eat responsible meat.
It's unrealistic that people are going to completely change their lifestyle and eating habits.
We can cut down, though.
Exactly.
We were a little weary going into it. We thought it was going to be very pro-eating animals rather than anti-eating animals. But we went into the documentary with an open mind, regardless, and actually we're very glad that we did. I would say that the documentary went in a much more vegan direction than I thought it was going to, because overall the documentary is anti-factory farming. And the documentary builds its anti-factory farming message around certain narratives, including those of small-scale farmers, but also vegan activists as well.
It even went back and told the story of how factory farming started.
And even that first broiler house is still in Delaware. It's like been preserved as like a
historical
something
site?
Special to go to. Wonderful place. So one of the first farmers we got to know was Craig Watts, who is a chicken farmer contracted by Purdue. And he was actually a whistleblower for Purdue. It's a very famous case. And he basically shared with us all of the horrors and atrocities of being a chicken farmer for Purdue, what they expect of you, what they demand of you, how much debt he went into. They actually pit chicken farmers against each other because what they want is they want big, fat chickens, and they want them as fast as possible. And so whichever farmer delivers the biggest, fattest chickens in the shortest amount of time gets a bonus, and the farmers that don't deliver, their pay gets docked. However, Purdue's not just handing out bonuses.
Yeah.
What they do is they give you the bonus from the farmers that they docked their pay from.
Yeah.
So they get farmers to basically fight each other.
So farmers within the same communities don't talk to each other. Goodness forbid they visit each other's farms.
It's like every farmer for himself.
Craig Watts, he would walk into his chicken sheds and just pick up dead chicken after dead chicken after dead chicken. In the Salon interview we read online, he said that he would sometimes pick up 500 to 600 dead birds per day. He'd be picking up these chickens and say, "This is your humanely raised, cage-free, free-range hen."
Yes, there were no cages.
There were no cages.
Beat you on a technicality. Cage-free chicken. And he actually did say that his children have never been inside the chicken buildings, and he will never let them go inside. He just seemed very defeated. I mean, these birds are designed to, they grow so fast over the course of 6 weeks that they can't support their own weight.
What was the example they used with if this happened with a toddler?
I think they said if it was the same thing, a 2-year-old human being would weigh 600 pounds. That's the kind of accelerated growth that these chickens experience, and so after a few weeks, they're not standing up and walking around, they're just laying there.
Then we are introduced to Frank Reese, who is a heritage turkey farmer. He also farms hens. He focuses on preserving the oldest bred flocks of turkeys and hens in America.
This was kind of the point in the movie where we found ourselves scratching our heads, furrowing our brows, doing this, looking at each other and back at the screen.
Because he says he loves his turkeys, and we believe him. We believe that in his own way, he loves his turkeys and his hens.
He has a really hard time sending them off to slaughter.
But as we all know, when you love someone,
you don't kill them?
Why doesn't he feel like there might be another alternative to what he's doing? He is so knowledgeable.
He did bring up the point that, you know, turkeys played a big role in American history, and even Ben Franklin wanted the national bird of the United States to be the turkey. Turkeys are very intelligent birds. They're very majestic. He said they have over 200 vocalizations, and they have their own language and their own relationships with each other.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if he could open a sanctuary or an educational facility?
He seems very enthralled with these birds, yet he still grabs them and puts them on a truck and sends them away to be killed for Thanksgiving. So it's a confusing part of the film, and he throws out a few those. Farm animals would go extinct, though, and so we have to breed these animals to eat them in order to keep the species going, which I think is kind of ridiculous because we have many endangered species on the planet that we don't eat, and we preserve them, so we could just as easily preserve turkeys and chickens. You could really see the conflict, though, within him. He even grabbed one turkey off the truck and said, no, she stays with me. And he was very emotional. It's a frustrating thing to watch because as vegans we're sitting there going like, you don't have to kill the birds. You can make a choice not to, or you can take steps towards turning your farm into something else.
Someone mentioned an organization that actually helps farmers transition. In fact, there's another man who raises pigs. We forget his name, and he's not on the Eating Animals website.
He was cooking breakfast, and he's like, everything that I'm cooking comes right from this property. And you see him outside, like,
the pigs.
picking vegetables, but he's making sausage out of pigs. You could just as easily turn all of that land. You could use all of that for plants.
Then we move on to other activists who became whistleblowers. Dr. Jim Keane, in particular. He blew the whistle on USDA's Meat Animal Research Center. Some pretty disturbing stuff.
Yeah. Cruelty and animal testing at this facility in Nebraska.
The FBI showed up at his house one day. It's
there was
crazy.
Actually a lot of that, like people being followed on public roads and being asked to leave and being asked to turn the cameras off and what are you doing here and what are you filming? And these are mostly just people going to like dairy farms or chicken farms or whatever, and that should say something about what's going on in these facilities if they don't want you filming. I guarantee that if you went over to the Budweiser factory here in Van Nuys
and you asked for a tour,
I think they might show you around.
Yeah, go to a slaughterhouse and ask for a tour.
This will be a time in our history that I feel like we're going to have a hard time explaining to our grandchildren.
Yeah, because it's very anti-logical. Explaining ag-gag to our children will be, what? So we weren't allowed the right to information?
Yeah, that was actually a big part of the movie, like the ag-gag laws, and Rick Dove, who was a founding member of the Waterkeeper Alliance, and he had a lot of like drone footage. He would fly drones over the factory farms in North Carolina. There was a lot of footage of the pink lagoons, as they're called. Pink lagoons, of course, is a euphemism for pee and poop-filled pools.
Anything that falls through the slats, pretty much.
Bodily fluids that just get sort of dumped out. And they mentioned these lagoons, they're not cement lined, they're not plastic lined, they're not sealed in any way.
In the earth.
They're just holes in the ground.
And they like they leak into the rivers and the creeks around. They spray that stuff. You guys know this. You've seen this before in the movie Speciesism, maybe.
Yeah.
They spray this into the air. They said that factory farms legally are allowed to be at least 1,800
feet
from
the nearest
residence.
Property.
Yeah, from the nearest residence. 1,800 feet is not very
Not that
much.
far away, no.
When they're blowing that stuff into the air, that makes people sick. Those people don't have very strong political clout.
No.
They are not...
Not against a corporation.
Right.
Corporations like, we're going to put a facility here.
They have no choice.
You don't have any money to throw at the problem. Deal with it. And they put these facilities in these places on purpose. You know, they don't put them in the middle of Times Square or at the Santa Monica Pier. You know, they hide them in rural, poor areas on purpose.
Luckily, we have successfully fought ag-gag laws in the past, and I am very hopeful that we will continue to do so.
These ag-gag laws are drawing more focus to the problem, which is probably the opposite of what these corporations want. But then again, they can't have people running through their facilities with cameras or flying drones overhead, because exposing what goes on in these facilities is detrimental to their business also. From the corporation's point of view, they're kind of between a rock and a hard place. We don't care, because what you're doing is evil, and people have a right to know about it.
It's in our First Amendment rights.
The right to free speech. And we should be able to say anything we want, including stuff that's detrimental to the meat and dairy industries. Gracie May agrees.
Gracie May, you want to come here? Oh, hello, baby May.
It's all in the consumer's hands, and they did make a point to highlight that fact.
Yeah.
In this documentary.
Basically, that's kind of the general gist of the documentary. It does not have the push we would like.
It doesn't say, like, go vegan.
Yeah.
It just says, this is what's happening.
I feel like it cleverly still sort of leaves it in the hands of the consumer to make this decision for themselves. And the reason I say cleverly is because they do make it a point to say that 99% of the meat that is available is factory farmed. And even the labeling, based on what Craig Watts was saying, even the labeling you can't trust.
Not to mention that all these animals end up at the same slaughterhouse, and all the practices in the slaughterhouse are standard. So whether it was a grass-fed cow or a corn-fed cow, they still get treated the same way in the end.
Yeah, and I know a lot of vegans are not going to like this movie because of that. I, for one, don't fully appreciate the fact that the ethics of killing animals was left out of this documentary.
The reason they were anti-factory farming had mostly to do with the environmental impact and the horrible conditions that the animals are in.
And the farmers.
But the simple fact that you're still murdering an animal, never really talked about, although the word murder was used. Bruce Friedrich is in the film. He's the co-founder and executive director of the Good Food Institute, and he makes probably some of the most bold, direct, and pro-vegan messages of the entire documentary. You know, he calls it murder. He advises people completely abstain from animal products.
People are not eating meat because of how it's produced. They're eating meat despite how it's produced.
To anyone who would actually go witness what goes on inside these factory farms, you would never, ever, ever imagine doing that to the animal yourself. And so what we do is we pay someone else to do it for us, which is a betrayal of our own values.
There's also the fact that if we wanted to go back to small-scale farming, there is no other choice but to reduce consumption.
The negative health impacts of eating animal products was touched on as well, especially with the use of antibiotics. They showed just how easy it is to get sick and just how easy it is for these diseases to spread.
H1N1.
All those diseases that they start in animals and then they jump to human beings.
Except no one talks about it.
No, it's just, whoops, swine flu.
Yeah, magic.
Don't know how that happened. And in fact, Neil Barnard makes an appearance in the movie. So there are vegans in the movie. He's talking about the health aspect, obviously.
Gene Bauer was also in the film, and he also tried to do a little bit of filming from the outside, from a distance of, I think it might have been a slaughterhouse, and he was approached by someone, and they said, you can't come here, you can't shoot, you can ask for a tour. Oh yeah, we'll give you a tour. And
he was like, you vegans, you know, you guys try to sneak all this footage, and if you would just ask me for a tour, I'd give you one. And he's like, really, you'll give us a tour? Yeah, we're very transparent. You will seriously give us a tour. And he just sort of was like,
never answered the
You know, as Natalie Portman pointed out in the Q&A, you can also kind of see the conflict in the factory farm workers too. Like this guy who he was really mad at Gene Bauer for filming. Well, why are you so mad?
Yeah.
If what you're doing in the building
is not wrong.
You shouldn't be mad. You should be proud. And that's actually another thing she mentioned, because the documentary touches on the expansion of the Western diet to India and China. And when they went and visited factory farms in China, a little different mentality.
They're proud to be adopting the American way of life, which
Yeah.
for us, we're like, no,
Yeah, no, that's
we
horrible.
promise it's not
It's going to ruin the planet immediately.
Yeah.
And another yay vegans thing that happened in the documentary is that plant-based products were called out by name. Ethan Brown from Beyond Meat, he's the CEO of Beyond Meat. He was in the film. Josh Tetrick, CEO of Just, I guess formerly Hampton Creek. He was in the film. Josh Tetrick had a wonderful story where he said, you know, when the electric light bulb was first catching on, it was called a gas light replacement. Yeah, it was like an alternate to gas lighting. But now we just call it electricity. It's the standard. And so we're calling these products, you know, plant-based meats or meat substitutes or meat replacements, but that won't last. You know, they'll become the standard and they'll just be hamburgers again. Except it'll be assumed that your hamburger is made from plants because why wouldn't it be? Ethan Brown also mentioned something in the documentary that we had heard when we went to a lecture of his a couple weeks ago called The Future of Food. It was at the UCLA campus. And he said, you know, to think that we can't create meat from plants is ridiculous because meat has a structure. It's not like this magical thing that just exists somehow. You know, meat is made of certain things in certain proportions, and we can extract all of those from plants and we can build meat ourselves. I had never heard it put that way. You know, when he was describing, like, first of all, meat is mostly water because you are mostly water. Mammals are mostly water. And, you know, there's protein, there's iron, there's this, there's that, and you can build it from scratch and then customize it and make it taste however you want it to taste. It was awesome to see those vegan products in a documentary that's going to be shown to who knows how many people. They're still very fringe. You know, here in LA, I feel like the Impossible Burger and the Beyond Burger are standard. Like, even our non-vegan friends know what those are.
Yeah, and they've just made it to the meat section of our local Ralph's Kroger grocery store. They're with the other meat, which I know a lot of vegans don't like. We like that because
when you're shopping for beef hamburgers,
you're gonna see it there. Our goal is to get the meat eaters on board. And if it's where they're used to going, because meat eaters are not going to just go to the vegan section if they're looking for meat.
Right. Not to mention the packaging boldly says how many grams of protein is in it, and the patties, they look exactly like beef patties. They're packaged like beef patties.
And it says something about, this is comparable to what you're used to. This is with the stuff that you're used to. You can feel confident that it will taste the same.
I mean, no one seems to have an issue with putting the plant milks with the dairy milks. That's how they've always been. And that might be one of the reasons why plant milks have exploded. Because when you go to the milk section, there's like one sliver of dairy, and then there's 9 slivers of coconut, cashew, almond, soy, you know, hemp milk, flax milk, oat milk. It's just everything.
Yeah.
And so people look at it and they go, oh, you know, and the packaging helps when it says lactose free.
Yeah.
You know, people that are lactose intolerant, which is most people, they might look at that and go, oh, maybe I'll try this. And, you know, putting stuff in front of people's faces is not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
We don't want to, like, stay in our own little vegan bubble.
Yeah.
We want the world to be vegan. Another thing we really liked about the movie was that the word choice was used to talk about that when you buy a cheeseburger, for example, you're choosing to kill an animal for your food.
Meat industry, you say in the doc, has done a good job of disconnecting eating meat from killing animals. When you eat meat, an animal has been murdered. And I was watching it eating a cheeseburger, and I set it down for a second going, okay, let me just take that in for a second.
You, as the consumer, have all of the power in this equation. You choose what to eat 3 times a day. And so if you choose meat, dairy, and eggs will continue to be produced. Yes, veganism is exploding, it's booming, more and more people are going vegan every day, but worldwide we're still a very, very small percentage of the population, and yet we're already seeing so many vegan products, so many vegan restaurants, so much fear from the meat, dairy, and egg corporations. They're passing ag laws, they're kicking people off their property, they're shutting down filming, they're investing in other plant-based products. They're trying to throw lawsuits at vegan companies for, like, using the word mayonnaise or using the word milk. you know, because you can't call it that unless it's an animal product. Like, they're already on their heels and they're worried. It's really not going to take many more people to go vegan to make a massive shift. And when Natasha and Luca were in town doing their workshop, they said that it really only takes 3% of a population to be active to make that movement the norm, or to at least tip the balance and make it mainstream.
3%?
3%.
We can do that.
Yeah.
We're doing it. The house was packed last night.
And it was not an all-vegan audience. You could hear people being really affected by it, too.
Yeah,
they were really shocked and appalled.
The way I see it is with these kinds of documentaries, you want to look at it from this standpoint. So here's where we are. Let's pretend that this is indifference. Will the release of this documentary make people care less, or will it make people care more and maybe start making different decisions? It's a stepping stone. Is it helping the movement or is it hurting the movement? Yes, it does sort of give people a bit of an out.
Oh, well, they said that free-range grass-fed organic is okay, and then that sort of bleeds out into eating the occasional meat. What is moderation? What is a little versus a lot? You know, there are people that already use hunting, though, as a justification to go to Burger King.
Yeah.
So it kind of, like, that out, I feel like that tiny sliver starts to become a huge doorway that people feel free to just walk through. Do we wish that the movie had called out the unethical nature of killing the animal in the first place?
Absolutely.
Yes, because reducitarianism isn't a valid ethical argument. If you had no other choice, then, you know, would you like someone to rape 1 day a week, or would you like them to rape 7 days a week? If those are your only choices, you're going to go with the 1 day. But those aren't the only choices. You can choose 0.
Yep.
And the documentary never says that. You know, something that I actually wish they had talked about, which they didn't, was the price. Because obviously, like, free-range, grass-fed, organic, humanely raised, blah, 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 meat, dairy and eggs is more expensive. And so what we're saying is we're asking people to consume less of a product, but if you do consume it, pay more for it, even though it has no greater health benefits to you and really no, you know, greater impact on the environment, because that's the whole reason we invented factory farming, was to cram as many animals as possible into as tiny of a footprint, versus the cheapest diet on the planet, which is a whole food plant-based diet.
So those are our thoughts on the movie. We strongly encourage you to watch it and rate it. Go on IMDb, go on Rotten Tomatoes, because here's the thing. If you're vegan and you don't like an aspect of this movie, particularly the ethics or lack thereof of killing animals, and you go online and you rate the movie a 3, people who are not vegan who see that rating are going to just assume that it's not a good movie, and they probably won't watch it. People watch movies based on ratings. So
we do that.
Yeah, we do. We do that all the time. Everybody has a keyhole. Everybody's keyhole into the vegan world is different. What motivates us is different. What inspires us is different. So we have What the Health coming at people from this angle. We have Cowspiracy coming at people from this angle. We have Eating Animals coming at people from a different angle. Those are all little droplets that we add to our vegan glass.
That's right. It's even green.
Like Natasha and Lucas said, you never know if someone is at 99% and you just put in that final drop and it opens their eyes in a new way and they go vegan.
So if you guys like this video, please click that thumbs up button down below. That really helps us out. And if you haven't already, subscribe and make sure to crush that notification bell. That way you will be notified every time we put out a new video.
Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, check out our Etsy store for some cool vegan swag, and guys, share our videos. We strongly encourage you to post them on Facebook, Instagram, whatever you'd like, because that helps us grow, that helps us spread our message, and we are very appreciative of those of you who have helped us along the way. And thank you to all of our Patreon patrons for supporting our channel. You really help us out. You help us get out there more and do more activism and spend our weeks and weekends shooting these videos. So we're really grateful to you.
And if you like what we do and you'd like to become a Patreon patron, the link is in the description below.
I also want to give a shout out to my mom. My mom went vegan 2 years ago. A couple of weeks ago, she went to her first activist event, the March to Close All Slaughterhouses in Boston.
That was our first activist event too.
Yeah. This past week, she went to Natasha and Luca's workshop in Boston. She got to meet them, which is so great and crazy. And she went to her very first vigil. She went to a chicken vigil in Chinatown in Boston with a bunch of people. I am so proud of her. So please follow her on Instagram and Facebook and support her. She's just getting started with spreading her message on social media.
Bye!
You have a hair in your shirt pocket.
Oh, yours?
No, yours actually.
Oh.
Okay, ready?
Was it blonde?
No, it was black. I mean,
It was black.
I don't know. I did.
Black hair. If you know
Oh,
something,
yeah.
are you?
Sorry, because it's a cattail.
The cattail.
Gracie May. You're on TV, Gracie May.
Your world